Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faculty Spotlights for the College of Professional Psychology at the Chicago School. I'm Lance Garrison. I'm Dean for the college, and I'm here today with Dr. Ken Fogel, Clinical Psychology faculty member for our PsyD Clinical Psychology program in Chicago. Welcome, Dr. Fogel.
Oh, thanks for having me here.
So, Dr. Fogel, can you share a little bit about your background and how it is you came to be a faculty member at the Chicago School?
Sure. Well, I could go all the way back, as in that, when two people really love each other, but I won't go that far. So I actually graduated from the Chicago School
Oh.
back in 2000. I probably shouldn't say that because that dates me, but and then I was out for a couple of years doing practice, and then I started doing adjunct teaching here, became core faculty like in '05, I think. So like around 20 years, but I have a pretty long history
Yeah.
with this place. And when I started, it was very different, as you can imagine. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
one program, one building, kind of one location. But yeah, it kind of drew me in right from the get-go.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say too that so before that, I have a couple of bachelor degrees, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was interested in medicine, which several of our students have made that decision as well, I think. And over time, I've been asked, well, why did you change? And I've always said, well, I didn't really appreciate the medical model and the competitiveness of all the schools. And lately, I've been reflecting on the fact that I wouldn't do too well with fluids. I think I prefer like more kind of the talk stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think that background has kind of helped kind of expand my thinking about how things work too.
Yeah, more of a preference for the fluid dynamics of cognition and emotion than the circulatory system, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of teaching, research, or clinical practice, what do you find yourself most passionate about these days?
So I have been more of a teaching type person. One of the degrees I have is in education, and
Mhm.
that was more about like high school science type stuff. But I've always been interested in teaching and learning, and that's been most of my focus. And I tend to, although I teach the same things, I focus on biological basis of behavior
Okay.
and intro to clinical psychopharm. I have some other courses too. But I find that those areas, there are so many new findings and new research that come out every day. It
Yeah.
can actually be pretty overwhelming. And to me, it's about keeping on top of that, integrating it into what we already know. And my whole thing is like communicating that to students in a way that is understandable, but also like clinically relevant too,
Yeah.
especially with the bio thing. I find that a lot of students who go into psychology, either they're afraid of bio or they don't see how it's relevant. And I really kind of take it upon myself to basically help adjust that perspective and explain how relevant some of the aspects are, and making it less complicated than it can be on the surface. So I find that really drives me. I mean, there are times when I'll be like preparing like my slides, and my wife says, "Wait, haven't you taught this thing like 15 times? Why are you changing your?" So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, the pace of research and, kind of the evolving understanding of those relationships between our biological processes and behavior and kind of that dynamic interplay of the two is it's just always evolving, right? So I would imagine as like as deep a facility as you have with like neuroanatomy and the brain and the nervous system, staying on top of that research is a constant work in process.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I really try to highlight the clinical relevance piece of it,
Yeah.
because and, I just taught my students. I had the class today. I mean, one of the first things I mentioned at the beginning is like, okay, we're going to be talking about this, and as always, I'm going to try to emphasize which parts are particularly helpful for your clinical work.
Yeah.
And even this morning, I talked about a meeting that I had with a client last week, where some of the stuff kind of came into the session. So I think students really appreciate that
Yeah.
for that course in particular.
Yeah, I think it's one of the really important aspects of our model of education, that practitioner scholar model, is that like trying to make everything relevant to what it means to be a practitioner, how it translates into clinical practice, bridging that gap from all of that new research that's coming out to what it means for you sitting with a client or a family or whoever, whatever aspect of clinical practice you're in, understanding the practical nature of that information is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of semi-related to that, um, given all the stuff which comes out and the way it comes out, I'm not a big fan of extremes, which kind of makes me inappropriate for this particular clinical climate, I know. But unfortunately, some of the stuff that comes out is accompanied by a lot of hype. And
Hmm.
so some of what I
Yeah.
find I have to do is kind of de-hype some of the stuff, kind of put the caveats in there, and because what I think that does, it balances what they're hearing, as well as um, the other aspect, which is it's not just that they have to know this stuff, but they need to be able to communicate it to other people,
Yeah.
whether it's clients or parents or trainees or whatever. And so it kind of it puts that mindset out there about how to take an information, make sure that it's accurate, and then be able to explain it in a way that is understandable as well as balanced.
Yeah. I think there is a tendency, particularly in the media, right, that to overextend the implications of a single research study, right? It's all about the body of research and the direction that the body of research is pointing to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, already within the past few weeks, I've talked about ketamine, I've talked about epigenetics, I've talked about the microbiome, and I've talked about inflammation. So, like,
Yeah.
all of those are like areas of rapid research, and yet so much misunderstanding and hype. So
Yeah.
I really like the capacity and the basically the opportunity to provide that type of balancing.
Yeah, and you've touched on this a little bit in this conversation, but could you talk a little bit more about how you see your work impacting students and maybe even how that work kind of extends into the community?
Yeah. I have had a few pretty direct examples of students who like had a class, and then either I will catch them in the hall like or like a year later, and they will say that something that we talked about in class they used with a client or with a parent, where they explained like how ADHD medications work, and to not be freaked out about this aspect of it. And that really kind of, to me, that's like the most important thing, that whatever you get in the classroom, that's one thing, but if it sinks in enough that it becomes part of your kind of work life in a way that feels natural, I mean,
Yeah.
that's something which is really important to me. So it's kind of like more of an indirect impact, but
Yeah.
I've had a few of those.
So, having been a graduate of the Chicago School and now a faculty for going on 20 years, what do you think makes the Chicago School unique or particularly valuable for students who choose to come and study?
And it's a great question. I kind of thought about this over the years as well. And just as a kind of a side note, probably like 15 years ago, there was this effort to come up with what are called the Chicago School model. Like a bunch of faculty got together and tried to figure out that exact question, what makes Chicago School unique? And we
Yeah.
talked about all this stuff. And I don't know if, to me, I don't know if it's necessarily the program itself, because a lot of kind of grad school, like the curricula are the same,
Yeah.
and kind
Very
of the
similar.
what's expected is the same. To me, the main difference are the faculty,
Yeah.
because that's where like all the individual stuff happens. I mean, you can have three different people teach the same course, and they all could be great at it, but there might be one aspect that they really connect with students a little bit differently. And obviously I'm biased, but I mean, I think our faculty are great. There's nobody on our faculty that I dislike or that I feel uncomfortable being in a room with for 5 minutes, kind of a thing. And also, which might sound odd, like I actually enjoy meetings, which I know that kind of makes me sound really weird, but as
You might
long
want
as
to talk to a psychologist about that.
yeah, where will I find one? So as long as they're in person, I definitely have to make
Yeah.
that clear. I've always kind of really liked in-person meetings. It's really the main time that we can all get together as a group and kind of connect. And I do kind of miss having that more often. But that also is a reason why it's never been for my case that I dread coming to work either. This is not the type of job where, people, they're like, oh no, Sunday night, now tomorrow's Monday and I can't wait till Friday.
Yeah.
I think a big part of that relates to my colleagues and kind of what we do. It's such a great environment for that. And I do think that the students very much kind of resonate with that aspect. And one of the main reasons they come here, because they have a whole bunch of choices of different schools to choose from. What are they going to choose? I mean, you can look at numbers like internship placement and licensure, and we do fine there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that it's our faculty, and that's one of the reasons that students kind of make their choice after they meet with us, like whether it's an admissions day where we get to
Yeah.
talk to them, or when we have the in-person visiting day, which is awesome. They get to come and chat more in person with us. And, I do think that kind of seals the deal where they really get like the feel of what it's like to be here with us as people.
Yeah, I think that faculty piece is so crucial. And I can't remember who to attribute the quote to, but it's that, you won't remember this or this or this, but you will remember how people make you feel.
Hmm.
And when you get to know the faculty, particularly, I mean, I think all of our faculty are great, but you have such a robust, diverse group of faculty there at the clinical program in Chicago that it really does kind of create a special dynamic that I think is unique for students coming into the program.
Yeah. And even more specific, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, go ahead, please.
So related to that, I mean, you mentioned the diversity of the faculty, and it's not just diversity like ethnic, racial, but in terms of thinking, mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and attitude and perspective, which is, what, like I said, I really like some of the meetings that we have, and that also relates to our curriculum as well. That we really like value the diversity of how we present psych. I mean, we have stuck to maintain that we don't adhere to a single intervention theory or orientation. We try to have students get all of that so that they can kind of make their own decision about what fits with them. And in order to do that, we have like really great representatives from those different schools of thought, whether it's existential, CBT, psychodynamic, or systems. I mean, that kind of feeds into all this. And I'm kind of smiling because we haven't done it in a while, but years ago, we used to have something that was coined by Dr. Rich Nylon, a former faculty from here, that he called like celebrity theoretical orientation smackdown or something, where there were like the representatives of each of the orientations that engaged in this kind of fierce debate about a case. That we haven't done that in a while, but
I love that.
Yeah.
That would be fun to bring back for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe staying on the topic of students for a final question, Dr. Fogel, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about entering into a clinical program, thinking about entering the field? How would you guide them through that process?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when I interview students who are considering admission here, I know several of them ask me that question too. So, I mean, there's several angles to it. The overarching one would be the relationship piece, that it's really important to get close with your peers, because you enter here like as a group. You're all in the same spot, going through the same kind of processes at the same time. So it's really important for support. But then also, I mean, these are people that are going to be your colleagues when you graduate.
Yeah.
that when you set up practices, that when you do kind of conferences and stuff, you will like stick with them afterwards. But it's not going to be everyone. Like you're not going to be as close to everyone in your cohort, but find the people that you mesh with and kind
Yeah.
of really stick with them. And then that also applies with the faculty piece. Now, I mentioned that we've got great faculty, but you're not going to be able to have the same level of intimacy with every single faculty member. And um, there'll be some that you resonate more with in classes or your advisor. But I also recommend kind of finding a faculty member, even if it's not someone you have a class with, to get more, like to get closer to over the period of time that you're here and kind of
Yeah.
develop that type of relationship. Because that also will be important just for kind of personal and professional development, for advice, for guidance, for
Yeah.
support, for networking. I mean, that's also kind of a key piece of it as well. So that's kind of an overarching piece about the relationships aspect. Another relates to opportunities. So, which is like a kind of a mixed bag or a two-edged sword here, because a lot of students who come here are very multi-talented. They've got a lot of skills, a lot of talents, a lot of kind of strengths, and then they come here and you can't do everything. You have to make choices, and what that means is you get to focus on something that you really like, but that what also means is that you have let go of something, and that means you have to suffer the loss of that. And sometimes students have difficulty with those types of choices, and they end up
Yeah.
taking too much, not because they have too much to do, but because they're having trouble letting go of something when they have to, or lose some time devoted to something. So when you have choice is great, except if you don't acknowledge that choice also involves loss. So, not to be too much of a downer about it, but I mean, it is something that I don't think people tend to think about. So there's that
Yeah.
too.
Well, Dr. Fogel, I really appreciate the conversation today. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.